Today, the Matt Walsh Show, a monstrous killer murdered a child a few years ago. He's currently a free man walking the streets. How is that possible? Well, this case is not only shocking, it should be a wake-up call for the country. We'll talk about it. Also, a federal judge tells Trump that he's not allowed to deploy troops to Portland. Is it time for Trump to finally defy these activist judges and let the chips fall? Also, the Democrat Attorney General candidate in Virginia detailed his violent fantasies in writing, fantasizing about murdering his political opponents and watching their children die. But has this revelation caused a single Democrat anywhere in the country to call for him to drop out? Of course not. We'll talk about all that and more today on the Matt Walsh Show. Our society works because of the freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment. Americans should be able to speak openly about honesty, family, and traditional values without retribution. And that's a principle Pure Talk proudly supports. They sponsor my show, which allows me to stand strong behind the microphone every day and share the truth with you. It's important to support companies that support you and your values, especially now. And Pure Talk does just that. That's one of the many reasons why I love Pure Talk. For just $35 a month, you'll get a plan with a ton of data, and you'll also get a free one-year membership to Daily Wire Plus. That's how much Pure Talk believes in what we do at the Daily Wire. They also believe in creating American jobs and supporting small businesses. So if you're a small business owner, you can save even more while enjoying white glove service. Go to puretalk.com/Walsh, switch to Pure Talk with a qualifying plan of $35 and get a free one-year membership to Daily Wire Plus. That's puretalk.com/Walsh. For a wireless company that's not afraid to share your values. Today, we're going to talk about a case that is, without resorting to hyperbole, the worst miscarriage of justice that I've ever heard about in my life. You know, we've spent a lot of time on the epidemic of soft on crime policies in this country. We've talked about how woke DAs and judges, and in some cases juries, have conspired to release the most violent and dangerous criminals back out onto the streets. And today we have what I think is the worst example of this trend, which is saying a lot because there have been some really bad ones. This one's so bad that if you haven't heard about the case already, you're gonna find it very hard to believe. You're gonna want to Google it and check my facts, which you should. And after you do, you'll see that not only is this case as bad as I say, but the more you look into it, the worse it gets. We'll get into all the horrific details, but here's the headline. A man who broke into a home and stabbed a 6-year-old child to death is currently out of prison, walking the streets as a free man. He spent less than 10 years in prison for this crime, for the intentional, brutal, savage killing of a 6-year-old child. Less than 10 years. Now let's back up. You know, it's long been understood, even in the most depraved cultures, that violence against children is the single worst crime that a man can commit. There's a reason why pedophiles don't last very long in prison. They're at the very bottom of the moral totem pole, and everyone, even hardened felons and gangbangers, understand exactly why. It's the same reason why when liberals defend abortion, they do so by denying the humanity of the child they're killing. They know that it's a fallacious argument. They know they're taking a human life, but they recognize at some level how horrifying and unjustifiable those killings are. They don't want to admit publicly that they're murdering children. So rather than confront the fact that they're justifying the slaughter of innocents, they pretend that it's not happening. A moral rot this profound cannot be obscured by sleights of hand or non-arguments for very long. Sooner rather than later, any society that tolerates the murder of children in one context will inevitably tolerate it in others. And as leftist prosecutors and government officials have made it their mission to unleash as many felons as possible on American citizens, it was only a matter of time before they go out of their way to free a murderer who deliberately and with premeditation executed a child long after his birth. We've been headed towards a moment like this for many years, a moment when literal child murder is punished less severely than many white-collar crimes are. And earlier this month in Kentucky, that moment arrived. On October 1st, a convicted child killer named 42-year-old Ronald Exantis walked out of prison. He's a free man, even though less than 10 years ago, He brutally murdered a young child as he slept. In the middle of the night on December 7th of 2015, Ronald Exantis drove from Indiana to Versailles, Kentucky, and he pulled onto Gray Street, he says, because it reminded him of the show Grey's Anatomy. And then he spotted the home of the Tipton family, which attracted him because, he says, it had Christmas lights on. He entered the home using an unlocked door. Now, keep in mind, this is a family that he'd never met before in his life. This is a town he'd never been to in his life. He just happened to be driving through. Inside the home were 5 children and their father, Dean. Their mother, Heather, was working late. Shortly before 4 a.m., Exantis walked upstairs where all the children were sleeping, and he proceeded to stab 6-year-old Logan Tipton 8 times in the back of the head with a butcher knife. And he used such force that the blade bent out of shape as he was stabbing the child. As Logan bled to death, his 11-year-old sister yelled at Exantis to stop and began kicking him very bravely, trying to defend her brother. Exantis attacked her next and stabbed her in the face. He also stabbed another 7-year-old child in the home. And soon afterwards, the father, Dean, confronted Exantis at the top of the stairs, and they got into a struggle that left him severely injured. But Dean was able to overcome the man, and he held him down until police arrived. Now, in the country that our founders created, for this crime, Exantis would have been tried, convicted, and publicly hanged, and the whole process would have taken like 24 hours. And there's no reason why it should take longer than that. There's no question about his guilt. He never even left the scene of the crime. So his guilt is 100% certain. What is also nearly certain is that he will commit more violent crimes if given the opportunity. But even if we could have some kind of assurance that he wouldn't do it again, it doesn't matter. Once you slaughter a child, your life is forfeit. A functioning country cannot tolerate any other outcome. You lose your moral right to continue breathing after you stab a 6-year-old child in the head. Of all the statements I've ever made on the show, that should be the least controversial. And indeed, in this case, prosecutors did seek the death penalty. But they didn't get the death penalty. They didn't even get a lengthy jail sentence. In the end, Ronald Exantis would have gotten a lengthier sentence and a harsher penalty if he'd committed, like, mail fraud. In fact, Exantis wasn't even held criminally liable at all for killing the child, for killing Logan. Instead, the jury convicted him of assault. Killed a child. He was convicted of assault. Watch.
This afternoon with developing news from Woodford County. One man sentenced for killing a 6-year-old boy and gravely injuring his family nearly 10 years ago has just been released from prison. That's our top story at 4. I'm Conroy DeLuche. Back in 2018, Ronald Exantis was found not guilty of murder by reason of insanity and guilty but mentally ill on assault charges. Investigators say Exantis broke into a Versailles home in December 2015 and killed 6-year-old Logan Tipton. Detectives found it was a random killing. Exantis had driven from Indianapolis and broke into the Tipton home while the family was sleeping. He also attacked Tipton's father and siblings, and they survived. WHAS 11 was there in 2015 when hundreds honored Logan's life at the community stadium in Versailles. Now, according to court records, Exantis was released yesterday after serving less than 7 years of his 20-year sentence.
So to recap the jury's verdict, they found Exantis not guilty by reason of insanity for the first-degree murder of Logan and not guilty by reason of insanity for first-degree burglary. At the same time, they found Exantis guilty but mentally ill of the second-degree assaults of 2 children in the home, not including Logan, and guilty but mentally ill of the fourth-degree assault of Dean, the father. So just to be clear about the terms here, because they're obviously confusing, in Kentucky, if you're not guilty by reason of insanity, then you can be released, just released back into the public after some time in the hospital. It basically means you won't suffer any criminal penalties at all. But if you're guilty but mentally ill, you get sentenced in the same way as any other defendant, except that you also get therapy or whatever in prison. So basically, for all intents and purposes, Ronald Exantis was found not guilty by reason of insanity on the murder charge, but guilty on the assault charge. So that's what happened. Now, right away, this should raise a lot of questions in your mind? If Xanthus was too insane to be held liable for breaking into the house and committing murder, then how could he be sane enough to assault 3 people? And the other way around, if he was sane enough to assault the people, then how was he not sane when he broke into the house and killed the child? The assaults happened within seconds of the burglary and the murder. It's not like someone can be insane 1 second and then perfectly sane the next. And certainly no evidence in this case suggests otherwise. So how exactly does this verdict make any sense? How could it be allowed? They're claiming that Xanthus was both insane and not insane during the course of committing the same crime. He was liable and not liable at the same time for the same thing. How is that possible? How is it possible that through the course of committing this is really one crime, it's the course of breaking in, going into the house, killing the child, assaulting, this is all one big criminal act. How could he be sane for some of that stuff, but insane for the other stuff? How does it make any sense at all? Now, the answer is that it doesn't make any sense. When the Supreme Court of Kentucky took a look at this case on appeal, they admitted as much. Quote, "This court strongly suspects that the verdicts in this case were reached because the jury could not reach either of the all or nothing verdicts advocated for by the parties. The defense urged the jury to find Xanthus not guilty by reason of insanity on all counts, while the Commonwealth argued that the jury had to find him guilty on all counts. Neither party directly advocated for a verdict of guilty but mentally ill on any count. It is therefore possible that the jury reached its verdict through compromise." Now, despite this finding, which is obvious, the Supreme Court upheld the verdicts. And their reasoning was that, the jury wasn't following the law. They're either morons or they were compromising with each other, which makes them still morons. But either way, they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And the verdict, it's just not, it cannot be legitimate. It doesn't make any sense. Nevertheless, according to the Supreme Court, we have no way of knowing whether the jury's screw up helped the defendant or hurt the defendant. Maybe if there had been no compromise, the defendant would have been guilty on all counts. Maybe he would have been acquitted on all counts. There's no way to tell. Therefore, the court decides to just stay out of it, instead of doing what they should have done, which is obviously order a new trial in that case. If you're looking at the Supreme Court and you're saying, well, this verdict doesn't make any sense at all, it can't possibly be right, the jury obviously wasn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, this is not legitimate, so we need a new trial. The word farce is far too generous for what happened here. And imagine being the family of this murdered child and reading this. I mean, the highest court in the state of Kentucky is admitting that the jury completely failed to do its job. And as a result, the man who killed your child isn't going to suffer any kind of criminal penalty whatsoever for the actual murder. He'll go down for assault, and that's it. This is what passes for justice in our court system at the moment. Now, to be clear, there was more than enough evidence to find Xanthus guilty on all counts. And this isn't the most important point, because even if he were mentally insane, it still would not justify releasing him from prison. As I've argued many times, mental insanity should, if anything, be an aggravating factor, not a mitigating factor. If it's actually true that this guy is too insane to understand that he shouldn't stab 6-year-olds in the head, that's all the more reason to remove him from human society permanently and immediately. But as it happens, the claim is not true. So let's go through this. It is true that before he drove to Kentucky, his ex-fiancée, Lauren Burgess, testified that he was acting erratically. And shortly before the murders, he had proposed to Burgess out of the blue. He also began crying hysterically and rambling at some point, according to her testimony. At the same time, she said that he showed no unusual behavior when they went to a jewelry store to shop for an engagement ring later that day, and then he drove to Kentucky. At that point, as the Supreme Court of Kentucky states in its opinion, Xanthus began demonstrating several signs that he was lucid. Quote, "While Dean and Xanthus were fighting, Dean told Xanthus he was going to kill him, and Xanthus begged him not to kill him. Officer Cottingham also testified that Officer Jonathan Geiler began doing first aid on Logan before the paramedics arrived. Officer Cottingham heard Xanthus ask if Officer Geiler was doing chest compressions, and also heard Xanthus say he's not doing the right number, he should be doing 30 compressions. All the officers that responded to the scene testified to hearing Xanthus say he was sorry several times." The Supreme Court's decision continues, Less than an hour after Xanthus was arrested, he was interviewed by Detective Keith Ford and Officer Geiler. Detective Ford testified that Xanthus did not appear to be under the influence of alcohol or drugs during the interview and was lucid and candid when answering questions. Xanthus accurately told the officers information such as his name, date of birth, social security number, home address, phone number, occupation, gave them an accurate description of his vehicle and where he left it. Xanthus knew that he was in Versailles, Kentucky, and that he originally intended to drive to Florida to see family members that lived there. He told the officers he entered the home through an unlocked door, and his description of the home was consistent with the photographic evidence. Xanthus told the officers he walked to the kitchen and got a knife. He knew that he stabbed a child in the head with a knife and that he killed that child. Xanthus also knew that the father of the child put him in a chokehold, and he understood why the father was angry with him. Finally, when Detective Ford asked Xanthus what his fiancée would think about what he did, he replied, quote, "She's not going to like it, sir." So all that just proves that he was lucid. He knew where he was. He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing was wrong. End of discussion. That's all you should need to know. Even though, again, it doesn't even matter. Like, I don't care if he thought he was on Mars while this was happening. I don't care if he thought he was the Queen of England. It doesn't matter what he thought about himself or where he was. What matters is what he did. And that should exclude you from continuing to live. Okay, that's one of those things. It just it excludes you from being allowed to continue living as a human being. Okay, that when you do something like that, that's the way it should be. Additionally, during his interrogation, Xanthus states that he should be put to death by firing squad, if not the electric chair, for killing a child. Watch.
Okay, then the father saw what you were doing? Correct. And got angry? Yes, sir. Do you understand why? Yes, sir. Okay. What do you think should happen to somebody that stabbed a child in the head?
They should go to jail.
Okay. What about if that child died?
They should get the chair, or not the chair. They should get something that's a gunshot, not a gunshot. They should get punished.
Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you something. The child that you stabbed tonight is dead. Do you understand that you killed a child tonight?
Yes,
a 5-year-old boy?
Yes, sir.
Is there anything you want to say about that? What are you thinking right now?
Pain.
You're thinking of pain? Or are you feeling pain?
I'm feeling pain. Sadness.
Is there anything you want to say or right before you go to jail? Or you're going to go to jail?
No, sir.
No? Okay.
So we have the killer himself telling us within hours of the murder that he should be put to death. He can obviously distinguish between right and wrong. He's not acting insane in the sense that he doesn't appear to be like delusional. And yet the jury decided that he was just too insane to suffer any consequence whatsoever for killing a child. At trial, prosecutors presented evidence that Xanthus may have been high on synthetic cannabis, which he was known to use all the time. This is from the Lexington Herald-Leader's coverage of the trial. Quote, "On the fifth day of testimony in the Xanthus trial, Dr. Kenneth Benedict, who was hired by the defense, could not specify what type of illness Xanthus has, but he said it could be schizophrenia. During questioning by public defender Kim Green, Benedict acknowledged that substance-induced psychotic disorder needs to be considered as a possibility. In his cross-examination, Assistant Commonwealth Attorney Lee Greenup noted that the Kentucky Correctional Psychiatric Center reported the psychosis was most likely substance-induced. So to restate, the drug tests weren't able to conclusively determine one way or another whether this habitual drug user had caused his own psychosis by taking synthetic drugs, but the psychiatric center, which assessed Xanthus on 2 occasions, said that it probably was. Now, when the parole board in Kentucky reviewed this case a few weeks ago, they had all this information. They knew that Xanthus was taking drugs. They knew that, according to the state's experts, those drugs contributed to this murder. They knew that no one could possibly ensure the safety of the public if he was released from prison. And most importantly, they knew that Xanthus murdered a child in cold blood. But then the parole board made the decision to let him out of jail anyway. They released him early from a sentence that was already way, way, way too short, because it should be a permanent sentence of death, or at least life in prison. And they came along and said, oh, you know what, that's still too much. We're going to let him out of jail now. Why? Because he exhibited good behavior. Now, I would think that stabbing a child in the head is the kind of bad behavior that would, at an absolute minimum, keep you locked in prison until you die. But instead, because he managed to sit like a good boy in his jail cell without getting into too many fights or whatever, they're going to reward him by releasing him from prison. And he's out of prison right now, as we speak. Free man. Here are the members of Kentucky's parole board who made that decision. Their names are Ladidra Jones, Lee Wiggins, Chris Deglow, Chrissy Coe Fields, Cindy Hedelston, Sean Helbig, Michael James, Sherry Lathan, and Gregory Leist. Every single one of these people, to the extent that they had a role in this decision, should be removed from office immediately. And in a just society, they would also be held personally, legally, and financially liable for whatever crimes Exantis goes on to commit, and he almost certainly will commit more crimes if he hasn't already. But at the very least, they should be fired. And the governor of Kentucky has that authority, but because he's a Democrat, he obviously won't do that, because Democrats are the party of murder, including child murder, especially child murder. This is an untenable and intolerable state of affairs. If the court system will not penalize child murder, then other people will. Now, that's not the ideal way to go about these things, obviously. You'd rather have the justice system be the one that administers justice. But if they won't do it, eventually their role is going to be filled in other ways. That's an inevitable reality. I'm not saying I want it to happen. I'm not saying it should, but that's just a reality. And the slain boy's father has made that point as clearly as he possibly can. He's vowed to kill Exantis the moment he sees him. Watch.
He stood up with me on top of him, just stood up and threw me 10, 15 feet across the room and went after her.
Dean Tipton says December 7th, 2015 is a night that changed his life. He says his children woke him up. He then found a man attacking his children.
And when I got to the top of the stairs, he attacked me. He come at me with the knife.
The night took a tragic turn with the loss of a life, his 6-year-old son, Logan. Dean says immediately after Logan's death, he lost his will to live.
I laid in bed. I gave up. I gave up on life. I gave up on my family. I gave up on everybody. I just wanted to die.
In the years since, the family has done their best to cope, but mentions they are mentally and emotionally scarred. And they are hurt that Ronald Exantis will no longer be behind bars.
Everybody deserves a fighting chance to have justice for them, and it's not.
I've had my talks with God, because I'm not afraid to tell you all. I told the court, if I ever cross paths with him, I will kill the man. I will kill him where he stands.
Now, I'd like to say that if this father carries out the threat that he just made, I'd like to say that there's not a jury in the country that would ever convict him of anything. I'd like to say that he'd be guaranteed to walk free. But that's not the case, sadly. In fact, the likely outcome, I mean, this is how bad things are now, and we all know this, is that this father would spend more time in prison for killing the man who killed his son than the man who killed his son spent for killing his son. That's where we are now. Meanwhile, the government of Kentucky has gone out of its way to alienate this man and his family. The boy's mother, Heather, told the local media that no one even alerted them that her son's killer is now free. Quote, "Nobody from the state has contacted us to ask us if we thought about needing security, extra protection, anything like that. If you're a victim and there's something like a violent criminal that's going to be released that is in connection to you or your case, I think you should be offered some sort of security or protection, or at least just a phone call." Yeah, I would agree with that. A phone call, an alert, security. How about a groveling apology from everyone in a position of authority in the Kentucky government? They should be knocking on this family's door, offering them anything they need, apologizing profusely. That's what they should be doing. And instead, they've just said nothing at all. They waited for this family to find out about it on the news. In Kentucky and many other states run by Democrats, this is just the way things work now. protection for law-abiding citizens doesn't interest the people in charge. They're focused entirely on freeing as many criminals as possible, including child killers. They will terrorize the public as a matter of policy until the moment the public decides to fight back. And I'm not calling for that or encouraging it. I'm just telling you what will happen, what is inevitable. Any state that allows a 6-year-old boy to be slaughtered in his own bed without imposing any significant consequences on the killer for that crime has embraced lawlessness. The justice system exists, again, to administer justice. Justice is a need. It's one of the deepest, most profound needs that we have as human beings and as a civilized society. And when a society is deprived of that need, when the system itself will not provide that need for justice, the public will inevitably find other ways to get it. That's the way things have always worked. It's not a good thing. It's not what you want. Again, it's definitely not what you want. You want the system to do this. But this is just a fundamental fact of human nature. Now, the White House seems to realize what's at stake here. When I drew attention to this case on Twitter, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, replied to me, quote, "I can confirm the White House is looking into this. It's wholly unacceptable for a child killer to walk free after just several years in prison." Now, right now, we don't know what the response from the White House will look like in practice. We know that even acknowledging this is happening is way more than we ever could have expected from Biden or any other presidential administration. But what will they do next? Will they bring federal charges or investigate the parole board or something else? We don't know. But for the sake of our justice system, they need to come up with something before more children are executed like Logan Tipton was. If it's not obvious by now, you should know that you are not insulated from this madness. Whoever you are listening to me talk right now, it could be you next. It could be your child. Logan Tipton's family thought they lived in a safe community. And they probably did. But one night, Ronald Exantis happened to be driving through it. And he happened to pick their house. It happened to be them. Could be you. Could be your child. Now, I don't say that to scare you. I say it because it's true. And when law and order is extinguished, when justice is dead in a country as it is in ours, the impact can and will be felt by everyone. And I say that so that you'll be vigilant and aware, and so that you'll understand that there is no issue more important right now than bringing law and order back to America. This should be at the top of everyone's priority list. Your family's safety and our country's existence depends on it. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. You guys ever read protein bar labels and feel like you're reading off a candy bar? Most protein bars are loaded with sugar and processed junk that leaves you bloated and unsatisfied. My team was hunting for something better, a clean protein bar that actually keeps us energized. Well, now enter Equip Foods Prime Bar, the first grass-fed beef protein bar made with only real food ingredients and absolutely nothing to hide. Starting today, my listeners will receive an exclusive discount on Prime Bar, which has become our team's favorite protein bar on the market with 20 grams of protein in every bar. You know, I've tried a lot of protein bars on the market, like many of you have, and none of them taste like real food. They taste artificial, they taste strange, they taste way too sweet. But Prime Bar actually tastes like real food, and it's good. Try it out with just 11 clean ingredients, including collagen, beef tallow, and colostrum, naturally sweetened with dates and honey. You get 20 grams of clean protein without the bloat. No whey, no seed oils, no gluten, no artificial junk. They're third-party tested for heavy metals, microplastics, and pesticides, so they can actually back up their cleanest bar on the market claim. If you want to try the cleanest protein bar on the market that already sold out once, go to equipfoods.com/Matt Walsh. Use code Matt Walsh at checkout to get 25% off a one-time purchase or 40% off your first subscription order for a limited time. That's EQUIPfoods.com/Matt Walsh and use code Matt Walsh at checkout. The holidays are upon us, and if you're hiring, ZipRecruiter is here to help. Businesses are scrambling to fill seasonal roles, haunted corn maze workers, lead elves, actual bearded Santas, snowplow drivers, you name it, all that. Finding people with the right skills or experience, though, well, not exactly easy these days. Whether you're hiring for one of these roles or any other role, the best way to find the perfect match for your role is on ZipRecruiter. And right now, you can try for free at ZipRecruiter.com/Walsh. Here's what makes ZipRecruiter different. Their matching technology works fast to connect you with top talent. You can find out right away how many qualified job seekers are in the area. And with their advanced resume database, you can instantly unlock top candidates' contact info. Let ZipRecruiter find the right people for your roles, seasonal or otherwise. 4 to 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And right now, you can try for free at ZipRecruiter.com/Walsh. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/Walsh. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. All right, Fox News reports a federal judge blocked President Donald Trump's efforts to deploy National Guard troops into Portland in a late-night decision on Sunday. U.S. District Judge Karen Immergut ruled the action was unlawful and unconstitutional, issuing an emergency temporary restraining order to halt the deployment of California's National Guard. The order also bars the use of troops from any other state or Washington in the state of Oregon. So this judge, this random woman in a robe, has decided that actually she's the commander-in-chief. Trump thought he was the commander-in-chief. That was his mistake. He thought he was the one elected to be the one who decides how and if and when and where troops are deployed. But no. Turns out it was this chick, Judge Karen. She's in charge. Judge Karen waltzed into the White House, barged into the Oval Office, propped her feet up on the Resolute desk, and said, "Hey, I'm in charge around here." That's basically what happened. And now Trump has to decide how to respond. And he has basically two options. I mean, not basically. He has only two options. He can bow down before Judge Karen, who is now the president and the queen of America. She's appointed herself as such. And he could say, yes, ma'am. Yes, Madam President. Whatever you say, my queen. Can I get you a Diet Coke, perhaps? What else do you require, my lady? He can do that, or he can reassert his authority. He can say, hey, get the hell out of here. Who the hell are you? Get out of here. I'm the president, not you. I don't care what you think. Those are the options. Subservience or the reassertion of his own power. Those are the only options. We have long reached the point. I mean, long reached it. Where Trump has no good choice. Because like I said, those are the two. And he has no good choice but to openly defy these activist judges. There's no third way now, right? And by that I don't mean, issuing posts on Truth Social. I don't even mean challenging this in a court. I mean flipping her the bird and ignoring her, just doing it anyway. Saying, oh, you don't think I should deploy the troops into? Oh, okay, well, I just did. What now? Oh, you don't think I should? Well, I did. It's happening. It's happening, lady. What are you going to do about it? Huh? What are you going to do about it? That's the only way now. That's the only way to deal with this judicial tyranny. You cannot stop the tyranny of the courts in the courts. That's the problem. You can't go to the courts and say, hey, I want you, the courts, to admit that you don't have this power. They're not going to. That's the whole point. Well, what do you do when you have an out of control judiciary that has appointed itself, the dictators, that has decided that it has the ultimate authority, ultimate power over everything? What do you do when you have a judiciary that says, you know what, actually, I'm the executive and the legislator. I get to make laws. I get command over the military. What do? You can't go to the courts and say, I'm going to fight you in court. No. You got to fight them. You can't bring them to heel while staying in their playing field and playing by their rules. I mean, if you're playing a rigged game and the other side is cheating, You're not going to be able to beat them in the game, especially if they own everything. If they own the league and the stadium, and they decide, like, you literally can't beat them. They own the game. They rigged it. So you have to step outside the game. And all that means here is that Trump has every constitutional right to deploy the National Guard to Portland. Not only the right, but the responsibility, I would say. Portland is a war zone. It's total chaos. It's in a state of open insurrection. ICE agents are being attacked. Portland is trying to subvert the authority of the federal government, defy the laws of the land. Obviously an occasion for the National Guard. Judge Karen disagrees. Well, her random opinion doesn't matter. Like, why should that bring everything to a halt? Oh, sorry, guys, we can't do this. Why is that? Oh, because Karen said so. Who's Karen? Who is she and who elected her to be in charge of this? Who elected her to be commander-in-chief? Oh, nobody? Well, okay. So Trump has the authority. He knows he does. Everyone knows he has the authority. This district judge feels differently, and who cares? This is where we are. I mean, again, I'd prefer if we weren't here. Like, I'd much prefer a scenario where the judiciary is not out of control and tyrannical and trying to seize, trying to appoint itself dictators over the country, trying to pretend that, they're the ultimate authority on everything the president wants to do. I'd much rather we didn't have that. And that we didn't have to have this kind of showdown. But we do. This is where we are. As we discussed last week, moving on here, something called Bad Bunny, the Hispanic guy likes to prance around in dresses. He was named the Super Bowl halftime performer this year. And that was a controversial decision among football fans because Bad Bunny is also an anti-American, far leftist, radical. He's been boycotting America because of ICE, even though he's going to show back up to do the Super Bowl, because this is a man of principle here. He's going to boycott until they offer him millions of dollars to do the Super Bowl, and then he'll show up. But the main thing is he's not American. He barely speaks English. Football is the classic American pastime, even more than baseball now. And so is it so much to ask that you have an American halftime show that you can understand that is performed in English for people? Like, is that so much to ask? Well, apparently it is. Now Bad Bunny has addressed these concerns from the fans, and he's addressed them during his opening monologue when he hosted SNL on Saturday, and here's how he chose to address it. Listen.
I'm very excited to be doing the Super Bowl, and I know that people all around the world who love my music are also happy, especialmente todos los latinos. Todos los latinos y las latinas en el mundo entero, y aquí en los Estados Unidos, todas las personas que han trabajado para abrir puertas, más que un logro mío, más que un logro mío, es un logro de todos, demostrando que nuestra huella y nuestra aportación en este país nadie nunca la podrá sacar ni borrar. And if you didn't understand what I just said, you have 4 months to learn. We have a great show for you tonight. Doja Cat is here.
Okay, so that's his answer. He's going to be doing the halftime show in Spanish. And if you don't understand Spanish, you have 4 months to learn it. That's his answer. Now, of course, learning Spanish so that I can listen to a Bad Bunny performance is about the least compelling incentive I can possibly imagine. Okay, it's like if I jogged 10 miles to go to the dentist for a root canal. So I have this hard, miserable thing I have to do, and the reward is something even more miserable than the thing I was doing to get there. And just to underscore the point, not that I need to, I'll play a clip of one of Bad Bunny's biggest hits. And this is called, what is this called? Titi Mi Pregunto. I think Pregunto is pregnant, isn't it? I took Spanish. I was forced to take Spanish in public school. I think I took it for like 4 years, and I could not speak a word. That's public school education for you. And that's also me for you. because I'm a moron. But I think Pregunto is Spanish. Anyway, so this has almost 1 billion views on YouTube. It was a big hit. Maybe he'll perform it at the Super Bowl. And here's a clip in Spanish, because that's how, that's the language that it's performed in. Listen.
Me gustan mucho las Gabriela, las Patricia, las Nicole, la Sofía. Mi primera novia en Kinder María y mi primer amor se llamaba Talía. Tengo una colombiana que me escribe todos los días y una mexicana que ni yo sabía. Otra en San Antonio que me quiere todavía y las de PR que toditas son mías. Una dominicana que juega bombón, uva bombón, la de Barcelona.
Okay, so you listen to that. The one, I mean, it is amazing how every Spanish pop song sounds exactly the same. And I know this is kind of the knock on pop music in general, but with the Spanish, it's even more so the case. I mean, it's the exact beat, cadence, everything for every song. It's just the same thing over and over again. And that's one thing I will say, and I mean no offense here, but I truly don't. You know that. I never want to offend anybody. It's very important to me. But Hispanics do have the worst music. That's of all, I mean, I got to say, like of all the ethnicities, it is the worst music. They truly do. Their traditional music, mariachi, is hell. I mean, being trapped in a room with a mariachi band that's hell. I mean, that is the music that they pump over the speakers in hell. That's how bad it is. And then their newer music is this crap. It's like it all sounds exactly the same. No variation, no variety, no subtlety. It's just not art. It's really bad. But anyway, so this is why you need to learn Spanish so you can understand those lyrics, is what Bad Bunny is saying. It's important. You need to know what he's saying. And you listen to that, and in fairness, like as I said, I don't really speak Spanish. I don't speak it at all. I know 2 or 3 words. So what is he saying? He might be unveiling the secrets of the universe. He might be explaining the cure for cancer. He might be imparting words of profound wisdom. This could be beautiful poetry for all we know. These could be lyrics of staggering depth and beauty. I mean, he could at least be giving us a great recipe for chimichangas or something. I mean, who knows? There could be something really worthwhile there. So let's go to and this is why I said, you got to learn Spanish. So when he performs it, you'll understand the lyrics. Well, let's go to the English translation of those lyrics, and I'll read them to you, just so you know what you're missing. And then you can decide whether learning Spanish for the halftime performance is worth your time or not. This is what he said. I really like the Gabriellas, the Patricias, the Nicoles, the Sophias. My first girlfriend in kindergarten, Maria, and my first love's name was Talia. I've got a Colombian who writes me every day and a Mexican I didn't even know about. Wait, how does he have a girlfriend he doesn't know about? Another one in San Antonio that still loves me, and the ones from PR that are all mine. A Dominican who's a fresh hottie. Fresh hottie. So there you go. Learn Spanish so you can understand those lyrics and others like them. Learn Spanish so that you can absorb all of that brain rot. Because that's what it is, of course. Now, you listen to that music and it really does make you dumber. And I truly believe, when I say it, I don't say it as for effect. Like I actually think that it causes brain damage. I think that a lot of this stuff, if you, like a steady diet of that, I think, I don't know if any studies have been done on this. I'd be interested to see them. You take someone, have them listen to this kind of music for 6 months, for multiple hours a day. So you do the IQ test before, and then come back and do the IQ test again. I truly believe that it's probably 5-10 points you've lost. Actual brain damage. But more to the point, Bad Bunny's attitude is, I hesitate to say that it's outrageous and infuriating because I know that that's what he's going for. He wants to piss off people like me, not me specifically, but just, normal Americans who expect that our greatest national pastime will have a halftime show in our language. And his goal is to tick us off, and I get that. But he succeeds, I guess. I have to admit. It makes me angry. It does. Because I'm really tired of this attitude. If it was just this one guy saying this, would be one thing, but he has the same attitude that millions of immigrants have when they come to this country. And the attitude is, you know what? I'm not going to speak your language. You bet. If you want to understand me, you got to learn my language. That's the attitude millions of people have, and I'm really tired of it. I think we're all tired of it. We speak English here. That's our language. This is our country, and English is our language. And that should have always been our attitude. But of course, we live in a country where it's to even say that English is our official language and should be declared as such. That is a controversial opinion. That is a political. Basic. What are the most basic requirements? I mean, we're talking below 101 level, right? I mean, one of the most basic requirements of having a functioning society is that everyone can understand each other. Being able to communicate and speak the same language. Basic requirement. You can't even get off the ground floor of building a functioning society unless you have that. And so this basic requirement of a functioning society is controversial. We can't even get everyone to agree in this country that, yeah, you know, we should all be able to understand each other at least. Can't even get people to agree. All right. We've got another entertainment story. I don't know why we have two, but so Taylor Swift dropped her new album. It sold 1 trillion copies, of course, but and I haven't listened to it. I haven't listened to a single second of it. I'm not going to. I don't really care. But I did notice the reaction. Just some of the reviews seems to be it's like a pretty lukewarm reaction. And I read through, some of the reviews, and so that's kind of the headline apparently of this album, is that it's a lukewarm critical reception. And even a lot of the fans, I've even heard from some of the fans, they're like, didn't love it. And still, it like I said, she sold 1 billion, trillion, infinity albums. And why people still buy, which I think I read she sold like 2.7 million, I think, albums in the first day, if I got that correct. Which is shocking also, because who's still buying albums at this stage? I don't know. But in any case, big commercial success, seemingly lukewarm reception at the same time. And there are two things about it, I was thinking about it, there are two things about that are kind of interesting, or at least worth remarking on. Or maybe not, probably not worth remarking, but I'm going to anyway. So first of all, you got a huge commercial success, lukewarm reaction. Seems like a kind of a contradictory thing, and yet it kind of defines modern pop culture. The music, the big hit movies, a lot of the shows people watch. There are still hits, like movies that make $1 billion. You got songs that are streamed 1 billion times. You have shows that millions of people watch. So pop culture is still producing a lot of hits, and yet it isn't producing passion. Nobody is really excited about any of this stuff. Because I was thinking about this the other day, I read an article about the next Avatar film. So James Cameron is working on Avatar, what are they on, number 3 now, I think? Avatar 3. And he's also doing 5, he's doing 4 and 5 too. So he's gonna make 5, he just keeps making these Avatar movies. And in many ways, Avatar, the movie, is a perfect, Avatar for what I'm talking about. Because the movies make insane amounts of money. They are really successful. So you can see why he keeps making them. And yet nobody loves them. Nobody cares about them. You never hear anyone quoting them or talking about scenes they love from the Avatar. Have you ever heard that? Have you ever heard anyone say, like, remember a scene or a quote, say a quote from the movie, or talk about an iconic character from these movies? No one ever does. Nobody loves the movies. Nobody considers them a favorite. Nobody really cares about the movies, and yet they make $1 billion. Every single one, he drops it, it makes $1 billion. They're huge blockbusters. And this is the dynamic. Big hits that somehow nobody cares about. There's no passion. And now you have this Taylor Swift album, and the reaction seems to be kind of, And it's breaking sales records. This is pop culture in a state of decadence. This is what a decadent pop culture produces. Kind of lazy blockbusters. Blockbusters that elicit both a giant yawn and also $1 billion. everyone just kind of lining up and going, yeah, fine, I'll consume it. That's basically the attitude of the American consumer now, especially when it comes to entertainment. People just line up and they say, yeah, okay, fine. All right, yeah, all right, here's my money. And you have a line that stretches to the horizon of millions of people lining up, to give their money, but no one is excited about it. I just find that kind of interesting. And Taylor Swift reveals the problem, or a big part of it. And because with Taylor Swift, you see the other element, the other aspect of this issue. And a few of the reviews have mentioned it, that she doesn't grow. There's no growth. There's no change. Her songs and lyrics haven't grown since she was like 17. And this is my biggest gripe about pop culture, and modern music in particular, or pop music, a lot of it. Not modern music generally, actually. I actually like a lot of modern music. If I were to give you, and this probably would surprise a lot of people, but if I were to give you my top 7 or 8 favorite albums of all time, not the greatest, but just my favorites, they would all be from the last 10 or 15 years, or maybe 10 to 20 years, most of them. Because I'm not one of these guys who says, they stopped making real music in the 70s. I actually don't like 70s music. I don't like any music that was made before the 90s, to be honest with you. A lot of it's great. It's just not my taste. I don't listen to it. So, if I were to bore you by giving me my top 7 or 8 albums, but I'm not going to. But I'm talking about pop music, to include rap music. And the problem with so much of it is that it just doesn't grow. There's no growth. And that's one of the reasons why these pop stars and rap stars often have a short shelf life. Now, Taylor Swift doesn't, because you're still selling all these copies. But, but often it works that way because their music makes sense for a 19-year-old, but not when you're 29 or 39. And they don't know how to speak to the experiences of anyone older than like 23. And you see the same, again, this is what franchise films, this is why the comic book movie genre is dying. Is because there's no growth. So they started making these movies really for my generation. When I was like 12, they started churning these movies out. And then you look and it's 20 years later and the movies are exactly the same. They haven't, so people are growing and you expect the genre to kind of grow with the audience. And it just doesn't. It just stays exactly the same. There's no growth at all. The Fed has finally dropped interest rates, and that's great news for American homeowners. Expenses have been a major burden on families. Wages are flat. And for many, the only way to make ends meet is to lean on credit cards. But that cycle of high interest debt makes it hard to stay ahead. If you're a homeowner, I want you to call my friends at American Financing right now. Interest rates have dropped. Many homeowners are seeing options in the low 5s. Compare that to credit cards charging rates in the 20s or higher. There's an easy path to see how you can finally put your hard-earned equity to work for you. American Financing can help you pay off that expensive debt, free up your cash flow, and keep your budget under control. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are saving customers an average of $800 a month. And if you get started today, you may even be able to delay your next mortgage payment. Take control. Call American Financing today, 866-569-4711. That's 866-569-4711, or visit americanfinancing.net/Walsh. NMLS 182334, NMLSconsumeraccess.org. APR for rates in the 5s start at 6.327% for well-qualified borrowers. Call 866-569-4711 for details about credit costs and terms. Visit americanfinancing.net/Walsh. We told you when the left attacks, we'd only get louder. And on Thursday, October 16th, we're turning the volume all the way up. Here's your first look at the Daily Wire's new live show, Friendly Fire.
October 16th, we celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the Daily Wire. 10 years of leftist tears. New shows, big moves, bigger targets. And first up is our newest show, Friendly Fire.
Usually I kind of like tune it out and then I come back in like most of the time.
No safe words, no moderator.
Not to be obscene, but those are underwhelming breasts. Yeah. By the way, that is the best evidence that he did not draw, because you know that he would have gone double D if he had drawn it.
We're celebrating our first decade and kicking off the next 10 years by doing what we do best.
Roll it back.
Picking arguments, starting fights, and filming the whole thing.
I find that horribly offensive.
You almost ruined my marriage. We're always kind of looking forward to what's the next big thing.
This segment, no one is disagreeing, but I actually find the whole conversation very disagreeable and unpleasant.
October 16th on Daily Wire.
Welcome to week 7 of the Pendragon Cycle.
Pendragon Cycle TV show.
Mark your calendars. Friendly Fire premieres October 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern exclusively on Daily Wire Plus. Don't miss out. Join now and get 40% off new annual memberships with code FALL40 at dailywireplus.com. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. Well, we began the show by talking about the decision by a Democrat-appointed parole board to release a homicidal maniac who murdered a 6-year-old boy by stabbing him in the head. Kind of decision that in the not-too-distant past you would expect to elicit immediate condemnation from both parties. That's because for all of our differences, both Democrats and Republicans understood that it's a great and unfathomable moral evil to butcher a child as he sleeps. We agreed that demons who brutally murder kids should never be a part of civilization ever again. Which is about the lowest bar imaginable, but at the same time, for most of our country's history, that bar has held. Well, it doesn't hold anymore. And we are past the point where Democrats can claim that only a small minority of their party affirmatively support the murder and lawlessness. Less than a month after thousands of Democrats openly celebrated the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the Democrat Party establishment has decided as a matter of policy that it is not necessarily opposed to the murder of innocent men, women, and children, especially, of course, if they are on the other side of the political aisle. Indeed, they aren't simply refusing to condemn the early release of a child killer after he spent less than a decade in prison. They're also explaining in writing that they want to see the children of conservatives die in their mother's arms. They want to see conservative Supreme Court justices hunted down and shot for their rulings on abortion. And the Democrat Party, from the base all the way up to the party leaders, is unanimously standing by in support of all of this. Now, the case of Virginia Attorney General nominee Jay Jones all by itself should be the death knell of the entire Democrat Party. This case all by itself would tell you the Democrat Party needs to be, in a metaphorical sense, burned to the ground. In case you missed it, the National Review published text messages from Jay Jones to a Republican state legislator. They were sent around 8 a.m. on August 8th, 2022. And Jones was upset that Republicans, including Virginia House Speaker Todd Gilbert, had put out statements mourning the recent death of a different state legislator who was a moderate Democrat. So here's what Jones wrote in the text to Republican House Delegate Kerry Coyner. Quote, "If those guys die before me," Jones wrote, referencing his Republican colleagues, "I will go to their funerals to piss on their graves, to send them out awash in something." Jones then said that if he had only 2 bullets and had the opportunity to shoot Cambodian dictator Pol Pot, Hitler, or the Republican Speaker of the House, he'd choose the Republican Speaker of the House every time. Quote, 3 people, 2 bullets, Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head. Spoiler, put Gilbert in the crew with the 2 worst people you know, and he receives both bullets every time. Even as the Republican legislator tells Jones to stop sending messages like this, because again, Jones was sending this in writing, in text message, to a Republican. That's how brazen this is, and how sure he was that he would never be held accountable for it. And even as the person that he's talking to tells him to stop and that says how upsetting all this is, he continues. According to the National Review, Jones, quote, suggested he wished Gilbert's wife could watch her own child die in her arms so that Gilbert might reconsider his political views, prompting Coyner to hang up the phone in disgust. Then Coyner sent his text to Jones, quote, "You were talking about hoping Jennifer Gilbert's children would die." And then Jones responds, "Yes, I've told you this before. Only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy. I mean, do I think Todd and Jennifer are evil and that they're breeding little fascists? Yes." Now, to be very clear about this, the man who sent those text messages has been selected by the Democrat Party to be the chief law enforcement official in the state of Virginia. He sent these messages, again, to a Republican colleague. And even when he was told to stop, he persisted. He clarified as explicitly as he possibly could that it's acceptable to wish death on Republicans on the theory that they're all fascists, including the children are fascists. And as Jones put it, quote, only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy. That is now the official platform of the Democrat Party. This is what they believe. If you don't agree with them, you and your entire family deserve to die. And that's what the mainstream of the party believes. And you know that because after these text messages surfaced, no Democrats have called for Jay Jones to resign. Not a single one. Not one single Democrat has agreed that this is disqualifying. And most of them haven't even criticized him for it. Abigail Spanberger, the Democrat nominee for governor in Virginia, has stood by Jones. The current Speaker of the House just spoke in a church pulpit, and all he had to say about the text is that, well, they're a distraction. Watch.
So we need to understand something. We have to be mature in our thinking and how we vote. We can't get distracted because they want us to get distracted by the text message here or something else. Stay focused.
Now, meanwhile, here's a statement from the Virginia Beach Democratic Committee, which plays a major role in electing Democrats in the state. Quote, the Virginia Beach Democratic Committee reaffirms its full support of Jay Jones for Attorney General. Recent press may have spotlighted past mistakes. We say, let those without sin cast the first stone. Yes, who among us haven't repeatedly called for the execution of the children of our political opponents? Who among us doesn't fantasize about murdering children, is what they're asking. Now, hopefully you're starting to see how that case in Kentucky was not an accident. This is what Democrats believe. They don't care if children die. They want children to die. What matters to them is power. And if it helps them in their power grab, then they're in favor of it. For his part, Jay Jones put out a similar non-apology. You can see it on the screen there. He says, like all people, I've sent text messages I regret. Well, again, cutting in here. No, not all people send text messages like this. This is coming from the left and only the left. And these were not texts that he sent like decades ago when he was a wayward teenager. He sent them a couple of years ago when he was an adult man in his 30s. Jones also sat down for an interview in which he again refused to take any responsibility. Listen.
A lot of politics is about trust. I can think of nothing more horrific than a mother having to hold her dying child. How can Virginians trust a man who said something so horrific, so callously?
Well, again, I am so deeply, deeply sorry for what I said, and I wish that it hadn't happened, and I would take it back if I could.
This is how sociopaths and malignant narcissists speak. They don't acknowledge that they did something wrong. Instead, they claim that they are actually the victim. Something happened to him, he says. He regrets that something occurred. Not that he was solely responsible for that thing occurring. And the reason he's getting away with this is that the entire Democrat establishment is behind him. And that includes the press. Here's the Washington Post's take, for example. And they stop short of calling on Jones to drop out. Instead, they say, quote, Jones has a month to convince voters that his hateful rhetoric does not reflect how he'd behave if elected as Attorney General. So I guess the idea is that Jay Jones needs to, pinky promise that he actually doesn't want to slaughter the children of Republicans, even though he put it in writing, addressed to a Republican colleague. He's got a month to convince us. Think about that for a second. They're saying he has a month to convince us that he actually doesn't want the children of his opponents to die. You would think that if you're a month out from an election and that's your challenge is to convince voters that you don't want children to die, you'd think that would be like, okay, you're finished. Your campaign's dead in the water. But that's not the case here. I mean, the Washington Post fully understands exactly what it's doing here. Their entire audience, such as it is, agrees with Jay Jones. So does the editorial staff. They all agree. And now their goal is to run interference for him so that uninformed voters don't see that until it's too late. It's impossible to overstate just how united Democrats are when it comes to this objective. They are now the party of murder and indiscriminate political violence. That's what they are. It's not just the media and the politicians and the rank and file MSNBC viewers who are on board. The Biden judges have joined in as well. mean, they're going out of their way to give Democrat political assassins a free pass. And that's why Biden Judge Deborah Boardman just sentenced the man who traveled across the country to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, a crime that, according to the federal sentencing guideline, should have put him in prison for at least 30 years, sentenced him to 8 years. And with time served, the assassin, a man named Nicholas Roski, will be a free man in 4 years. And what was the judge's reasoning? Well, by her own admission, she gave Roski a lighter sentence because he says he's a woman. Here's the Daily Wire's Luke Rosiak quote. The sentencing took more than 7 hours, with much of the time dedicated to discussing how Roski's transgender identity meant he should get a lighter sentence. In a more than hour-long speech justifying the light sentence, Boardman said that Miss Roski came out to herself as transgender in 2020, but kept it secret. Miss Roski's sister came out as gay 2 years prior, but Miss Roski saw that their parents struggled to reconcile her sexuality with their religious beliefs. I'm heartened that this terrible infraction has helped the Roski family accept their daughter for who she is. This is a man they're talking about there, by the way. He. So yes, the Biden judge just called the attempted assassination of a conservative Supreme Court justice, in which the assassin was carrying a firearm, knife, and zip ties, called it an infraction. The man who traveled across the country explicitly because he was upset with Kavanaugh's rulings on the Second Amendment and abortion and was going to kill him, kidnap him and kill him, well, he just made a little innocent mistake. And actually, the judge says that she's hardened. She's hardened that as a result of this attempted murder, that the assassin's family has come to accept this man and his transgender identity. Now, to be clear, this is the quote-unquote woman in question. We'll put him up on the screen. Yeah, just look at that natural, effortless, feminine beauty. Again, it's a farce. I mean, it's a thinly veiled effort to excuse a Democrat political assassin. And they're probably going to try the same strategy with Charlie's killer. I wouldn't be surprised by that. Oh, he says he's a woman now. Well, who are we to judge the fact that he's a violent psychopath? Now, as the sentencing hearing continued, the judge explicitly stated that she's going to let the assassin out of prison early because he might not be able to get cross-sex hormones in prison. Quote, the judge continued, she'll be imprisoned in a male facility even though she's a transgender prisoner pursuant to an executive order from the president. Before the executive order, that wasn't the case. Earlier in the hearing, Boardman lashed out at the prosecutors and President Donald Trump, saying, let's not hide the fact that President Trump issued an executive order saying transgender inmates would be assigned to prisons with their biological sex. With the injunction in place, Ms. Roski could receive gender-affirming care. But if that injunction goes away, she could be denied it. So when I sentence her, I take into account that she is a transgender woman. Now, as you may have noticed, this is the kind of punishment that Democrat foot soldiers will receive. If they identify as women, they get out early. If they identify as mentally ill, they get out early. If they have 40 prior arrests, they get out early. If they admit on camera that they should be put to death after slaughtering a child as he sleeps, they get out early. And the media will immediately get to work in an attempt to sell the narrative. Take a look at these articles. You can see them here. These are from the New York Times, ABC, CNN, and the AP. Every single outlet refers to Nicholas Roski as a woman. None of them use his legal name. They've erased his past identity, his actual identity, as if it never existed. None of these outlets were doing this as recently as 2 months ago. The Daily Wire broke the story that in sentencing documents, the assassin's lawyers declared that he was really a woman, in addition to being severely mentally ill and suicidal, coincidentally enough. And in an instant, right on cue, every single corporate media outlet went along with this obvious fabrication. If you were reading some of these articles, you'd have no idea about any of this. Now, just to give you a sense of how quickly they rewrite history, here's how New York Times covered this story when the man was arrested. You see it here. Quote, man pleads guilty to trying to assassinate Justice Kavanaugh. Nicholas J. Roski, 29, of California, faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. So much for that. Now this man is a woman, we're told, and instead of life in prison, he'll be out in 4 years so he can hunt more conservatives on the order of top Democrats. There's no reason for anyone to entertain the left's elaborate misdirection campaigns or euphemisms anymore. It's time to say what we all know is true. I mean, when we say the left wants us dead, I mean, here it is. This is the official position of the Democrat Party. It's what the party stands for. There is no atrocity, no matter how horrific, that would be unacceptable to them. That's why ICE officers are being shot at and run over. It's why child killers are walking free and psychopaths are on the ballot for Attorney General. And it's why, as we near a month after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, it's now more urgent than ever to dismantle the vast terrorist networks within the Democrat Party before any more innocent conservative men, women, and children are slaughtered. And I'll close with this cheerful thought, because we have to really think about this. If Jay Jones becomes the Attorney General of Virginia, if that happens, which it may well happen, every conservative in the state will know that the chief law enforcement officer thinks that they deserve to be murdered along with their children. And not only will they know that, they will also know that the Democrat voters in the state, their countrymen, their own neighbors, their friends, right, even their family members in many cases, have endorsed that sentiment. That will be, without exaggeration, the death of any sense of legitimacy in the system. It will be the end of any hope, of any semblance of unity. I mean, it'll be the kind of thing that starts civil wars. And I'm not saying there will be one. I'm not saying that I want there to be one. I'm saying it's the kind of thing that starts them, which is a dark and harrowing thought. But these are, sad to say, dark and harrowing times. And on that rather depressing note, we will end. That will do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Godspeed.
A Democrat calls for the murder of a Republican and his kids and doesn't lose a single endorsement. ICE hogties an Antifa operative in Portland. And Bad Bunny says you need to learn Spanish if you want to understand the Super Bowl halftime show. Check it out on The Michael Knowles Show.